Shall I?
No, he will tell. He will say. Yeah, we are live. Mine, can we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ashwini, we can start.
Okay, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Ashwini Thaide. On behalf of AMR Declaration Trust, I welcome you all to this webinar on engaging students in our effort to tackle the challenges of antimicrobial resistance. So this webinar will discuss how we can engage medical students and non-medical students in our effort to tackle AMR. We will explore options to inspire and ignite the young minds, and we believe young minds will give us innovative solutions for sure. AMR Declaration Trust, it's a public charitable trust, is founded on the principles of Chennai Declaration Document and Initiative. Our primary objective is to stimulate discussion and action and explore Indian innovation and ideas to tackle the global challenge of AMR. AMR Declaration Trust has minimal funds. We have received small donations from doctors. However, our resources it's not adequate to conduct academic activities. Still, we decided not to charge any registration fee to spread the message to broader audience. We are grateful to the doctors who gave their small contribution donations to the trust and pharmaceutical companies such as Sanofi, Glengen, Converge Biotech, Alnich, Viatris, and Pfizer, who have provided us with small unrestricted grants for the webinar so that we can conduct the webinar without any registration fees. So today we will be having two sessions. The first one is mistakes are proof that you are trying. And the eminent panelists we are blessed for today's sessions include Dr. V.M. Katoch. He is former DG ICMR. Dr. Mohanan K. He is Vice Chancellor, Kerala University of Health Sciences. Dr. Sanjeev Singh, he is a director, Amrita Institute, Faridabad. I'm afraid he is not able to join. Dr. Rama Chaudhary, she is a Dean Research, NIMS University, Jaipur, and she was former Dean Research, AIMS, New Delhi. And Dr. S.P. Dangaya, she is a Managing Trustee, Innovative Thought Forum, who is well-known management expert. So may I invite Dr. Ghafoor, our Managing Trustee, to moderate the session. Dr. Ghafoor.
Thank you, Ashwini. We have very eminent panelists for our webinar today, and we are discussing a very important topic. How can we engage our students, both medical and non-medical students, in our efforts to tackle the challenge of antimicrobial resistance? First, to start the meeting, we will have a formal release of our book, the Handbook of AMR and AMS by AMR Declaration Trust. Our eminent panelists will release the ebook. Mayank, over to you. We have a short video on our book. Thank you. Katoch sir, how can we effectively raise awareness among medical students about the growing threat of antimicrobial resistance?
Dr. Ghafoor, this is I think, a very difficult question because, we medical students are supposed to know how the drug resistance is there, how it's created, how we can do it. I think the first part, I'll say that whether it's a medical students or a non-medical students, if this is a social change which you are trying to bring about, or our trust is now trying to bring, because I'm also part of it now. So there the correct information should go. At the moment, the perception of the people is totally wrong. Actually, since 2010 or 11 onwards, particularly 2011 was a landmark year when every declaration came from everywhere in the world. But after that, this is, because the people are not trying to look at the actual problem. Drug-resistant bugs, that information should go into the mind of medical students or non-medical, whichever I said. That the bugs are there actually, and they have acquired a resistance for their survival. They are not fighting us all the time unless they are pathogens, or they enter our body by accident or by our own manipulations. So to deal with the resistance, how the resistance is there in the bugs, how they are using it for their own survival but not touching us, but then the hygiene comes into question, That means if they are not entering into if they don't enter into our wounds and the system through the wrong practices in the institutions or elsewhere, then they're no danger actually. They were never the danger. They are living their life. That's all. So to keep on attacking the bugs everywhere, that's not the strategy. It is not to make a bug-free world actually. You should not try that for that. They are friends, and they are no friend. They are living their own life. The second, that means that concept should be very clear to them. That means if you have to handle the resistance which occurs to the infections which occur due to the bugs from the water, from the soil, from else, then that's to be handled separately. The second part is, where our actually ignorance or the habits, they are taking us into a mess actually. And there again, we should give the examples of how this resistance has been created by a particular practices so that they understand it actually. At the moment, people get emotionally charged. We have to fight resistance. Where is the resistance? Whom are you fighting? Whom are you shooting? Then this question, then the point arises, if it is acquired resistance due to our wrong, faulty practices, which are the things where we can make a difference, and the world has made a difference, India has made a difference. And I think the India-centric example will be far more important actually. And then, then the question is how the resistance spreads actually, and that its transmission is resistant. I think those mechanisms are very important to them. That this is the way of is a transmission to others. So can it be blocked at the hospital cares? How it can be reduced in other settings? And there actually we keep on blaming the poultry, we keep on blaming something else without generating any India-specific data. I think until we do that, I think you are harming more of your country than actually looking at the progress actually, than tackling the resistance. So I think this is the 3-4 practices which I think are very, very critical for medical and non-medical students to think about. So how we can prevent, how we can reduce, because ultimately then the medical students should get into science also. There is a cost economics of treating a patient with the drug-resistant bug actually, how much it takes. They keep on taking them studies from time to time, how much more toxic that therapy is. So this is more specific for the medical students, and how it was transmitted in your hospital actually. Why the Citrobacter has turned resistant to same type of bug, because you keep on washing your floor with the same kind of antiseptics actually, which was not required all the time. So you have compulsorily made the Citrobacter resistant for its own survival actually. So it would not have been that way. So I think that kind of examples, will ultimately transform their minds to look at the problem objectively and in a very long-term perspective actually. I think this is the kind of science which should get into the heads of the young medical students and non-medical students also. For example, it is a non-medical students if it is there. The non-medical students should look at the cost economics and how he or she can be contributing to the spread actually. How they, I think those kind of examples. For example, the last point Dr. Ghafoor I'll make. See those MDR outbreaks in the HIV patients in US in 90s, and those were very interesting results where we shown that those source was medical clinics. Now one place it spread because the air handling was improper. If you put the exhaust on the top, this will lead to infection to everybody. If it is it should be at the bottom there in such settings, in the schools, in the hospitals, gatherings. And the second place, it was a improper sterilization of the bronchoscopes. But once they tackled these two issues in US, there have been no outbreak after 92. Okay? So that means this is something which is easily handleable. It can be handled. So I think this kind of messages which will bring a social transformation. I think Dr. Ghafoor, they should be the focus of our trust. And we will be stimulating people to write projects. We will be helping them also. We'll do it. Whenever you plan accordingly, so that they get into that mode, active mode of being participants. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, sir, for mentioning students will be our core stakeholders in our efforts to tackle the challenge of AMR. We have got Dr. Mohanan. Sir, you are the Vice Chancellor of Kerala University of Medical Sciences, a very prominent medical university in the country. What is your opinion? How can we raise the awareness on AMR among our medical students? How can universities foster that process?
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Ghafoor. Let me at the outset congratulate you for taking such a very huge initiative on you yourself and the AMR Trust, taking such a huge initiative to catch the students, catch them young. That is the most important thing. We have been talking about antimicrobial research. We have been conducting several workshops, conferences, but I don't think it is these are all doing good, because this has to come from the bottom, and bottom is the new generation, the new graduates, the people who are going to treat the country, who are going to treat us. And if they don't know, if they are not aware of this thing, there is no point in telling to everyone that there is a big issue. And very interesting thing is that actually numerous thousands and thousands of bacteria, virus reside in our body. In fact, I saw a data which says that the number of bacterial and viral cells in a human body is more than the human cells. So in that way, are we a human being or are we a collection of viruses and bacteria is a different issue. So, but still we are all living. Why? We are all living comfortably in symbiosis. They don't want to destroy us and we don't want to destroy them. This is the issue. And all these bacteria, all these viruses, they help us to survive. The gut microbiome and the discussions which are going on. And people say that the bacteria in your gut decides whether you are going to be an intelligent man or not. So that much connection is there. And therefore, this has to be known. And who should know? The medical students should know. And the way you have written this book, I'm so happy to go through that book. It has been done in such a good readable way, so that they'll be really interested. We all learned pharmacology reading Sadoskar, and we know how many pages we could read in a single day. So, of course, the subject and the way it was presented, it was terribly boring. But now it must be made very interesting. And in fact, we should make our students ask questions. And then very often we may not be able to answer, but we must enable them to ask questions. But now what you actually do is that we don't permit them to ask questions and we give answers which are never thought of. So this is the issue. And then they don't want these answers. And the concern about the nature, the concern about the human life, the concern about earth, I can tell honestly that it's more among youngsters than among us. This is a reality which my day-to-day interaction with youngsters, I feel that they are more concerned. Because as Mahatma Gandhi said, we are just custodians for them, who are the custodians of their next generation, and we destroy everything. Recently, I used one example. Suppose there is a mosquito comes to bite you. How can you use an atom bomb? You cannot use that. So this is what we have been doing. Because companies will come out with more and more molecules, which will have marginal efficiency on the other one, and they will market. And the people to whom you are talking that you should not use antibiotic improperly, honestly, will not listen to us, because they will listen to the marketing people. This is a reality. Let us admit that. But then, who are the people who will not listen to marketing people? The youngsters, the new postgraduates. the new interns. So give them the idea and tell them that if you want to live for a longer time, these are the practices you have to do. So if you don't connect them with their practice, if you don't connect them with their longer life, nobody will listen. Because and sometimes if the campaign is very huge, it may play in a reverse way also. In fact, many years ago, there was a huge campaign against drugs in Kerala. It was launched by Shastra Sahitya Parishad. I don't know, many of you are aware of it. It's a people movement for science. And the campaign was so strong that many people refused to take any drugs. Because people started saying that every drug is dangerous. Then we found it very difficult to convince them that this specific drug is good for you, like that. But anyway, that situation has changed. So if you campaign in a good way among the youngsters who are ready to listen, definitely it will make a change. And in fact, the book you have sent to me, I have sent to all my the faculty members, and with a specific instruction to send it to all the students. I think many of them must have received, and many of them must be reading it. And that is the way we have to do it. And maybe you can add on maybe some kind of competition, quiz competition, everything based on these books. And so that they will be, because there must be some incentive for anybody to do anything. So you can have some kind of incentives, and then they will read it. But the point is, they will definitely practice. At this age, if you convince somebody about something, they will definitely. So I profusely congratulate you for taking this great idea. Catch them young. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan sir, for stressing the importance of involving students and your kind words about our book, or a book on AMR and AMRs. In fact, when we were preparing and editing that book, Dr. Nitin Bansal is the editor and the co-editor of that book. We wanted to add more and more chapters, but Nitin very strictly told, the more number of chapters we add, the less number of students who read it. Absolutely. It cannot be more than 100 to 150 pages. If anything more than that, is not going to be useful. What we produce, what we publish should be different from the existing big books available for the students. We should make their life easier so we can involve them more and more into the issue of antimicrobial resistance. Thank you, sir. Dr. Uma Shekhar is the Vice Chancellor of SRMC in Chennai. Ma'am, what is your opinion? How can we involve students, and what role universities can play in involving students and taking their ideas?
Good afternoon, Kapoor. Good afternoon, everybody. Congrats for bringing out such a comprehensive book. Though I've not had the chance to see it, I think that's a need of the hour. Being the Vice Chancellor of a healthcare university, I can envisage certain interventions. Number one, most of the students coming to the university, or whether it is for a post-graduation or undergraduation, for a medical or a paramedical course, are not aware of the magnitude of the problem. They simply do not know that we have a huge problem on hand with regarding resistance to antibiotics. I think the first thing is they should be made to understand, that there is a huge problem with antibiotics and the consequences of such resistance. I think that's what we should make them understand, first thing. If I can make an action plan, I would say, for example, an MBBS student gets admitted, right? And we have what is called as an orientation. The NMC now has advised an orientation program for them as soon as they get into a medical school. And this orientation program is for 175 hours. It goes on for about a month, right? All medical colleges, across all medical colleges. We do have modules, teaching modules in that. And then we now have introduced infection control in the module. And they have hand washing, infection control, the other principles of infection control. transmission-based precautions. All these things are being taught to them during. So they have just come out of +2. They know the basics of science, biology, and they are very eager to, at that point of time, they're very eager to listen to what we say at that point of time. So at that point of time, I think there can be a small module which is introduced about, the antibiotics, the basics of antibiotics, when to use, when not to use, what are the consequent types of resistance and how they spread, and what are the consequences. I think a small module can be introduced at that point of time. It is just a sensitization at that point of time. They're not going to prescribe anything. It's just a sensitization. The next point of time is, of course, they go through microbiology and other things. And then the NMC has introduced what is called as an elective program for them. A few weeks of electives at the end of the 3rd year. When they finish ENT, Opthal, community medicine, all those things, before they get into the final year, they have an elective. And we are offering them a wide range of electives. They can go, elective for a, cardiothoracic surgery or a neurosurgery, anything they want, we offer. At that point of time, I think we can also, for those students who are interested, we can also have an elective program for antibiotic stewardship, antibiotic policy making, antibiotic audits, these things can be introduced for them. And at least those students who are interested will take this up at that point of time. You can offer them whether they take, this is only an elective, right? But at least we can have a module at that point of time. So, you have a chance to, evince interest in at least some students at that point of time. The next intervention period is when, during their internship, at the beginning of their internship. That's when they're going to be in the, patient setting, patient care. So we have a very short orientation program. And I think the onus of responsibility will be on the unit chief or the, the guide or whoever, and whomever they are shadowing. I think the responsibility will be on them. So this is the undergraduate program as far as I'm concerned. But as a postgraduate, I think in most hospitals, postgraduates prescribe antibiotics. So I think that we have a very 3-day short orientation for all branches of postgraduates. But I think we need to, emphasize on this and tell them about the, prescription, give them the prescription rights, not always, only in times of emergency, because, until they get used to all these things, they should know the nuances of prescription practices, and they should know, involve them in antibiotic audits, even the postgraduates. I think these are the times when, you can intervene. Now, being a multidisciplinary healthcare university, I have also other students, dental, nursing, pharmacy, and all these people. Dental as such has no module of any kind of this, whether it is BDS or MDS. I don't think at any point of time they are, taught anything. But we have an elective program on, again, infection control. It runs for about 6 weeks for all the other paramedical courses. So I have students coming for this elective program from human genetics, biomedical sciences, pharmacy, nursing, all these dental, all these people come. So I think wherever we are trying to introduce infection control modules, I think this should also be incorporated, have this thing of, sessions on, prescription practices and other things. So, they get aware of all these things. Of course, once they are out in practice and they are prescribing, I think we have no control. But as far as students are concerned, I think the most important students whom we should educate on this are the nursing students, the pharmacy students, the dental, and of course, all the undergraduate and postgraduate students of medicine. So I think this way, I think we'll make a beginning. First, because they don't know, they're not aware, right? They're not aware of the problem. First, to make them be aware of the problem and tell them what to do and what not to do should be our, mentoring role on this.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am was in the second session, but ma'am wanted to leave early, so we moved the position. First, ma'am stressed few points. An induction module for undergraduates, an induction module for house surgeons, an induction module for specific postgraduates. And an elective AMR should be an
Yes.
elective, because it's become a big specialty and specialization by itself. And these are very, very innovative ideas. And for the module, we believe the book we prepared should be useful for a module for undergraduates and postgraduates. We prepared in a question answer format to make it very simple.
Yeah,
because
it
we
should
know
be-
how complicated the topic is.
Yeah, I know that it should be made very, very simple, because we are not just talking about medical students, we are talking about other students as well. So the language should be simple, and the message that you have to give also should be, in a very, very precise and, lucid manner.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Amita Joshi, ma'am is the Vice Dean in Grand Medical College, Mumbai. Ma'am, how can we increase the awareness? How can we involve institutions?
I concur with ma'am. She's very nicely summarized the new curriculum which our NMC has done, and each university and each college level has started implementing. But I feel rather than that, even the 11th and the 12th, because basic cleanliness is something which has gone away. The very fact we are saying this disinfected, but the basic, even whether I go to my nursing staff or the paramedical, they ask for disinfectants, but they will not look into the basic. I feel the cleanliness component is somewhat being missed out, even in the hospital setting. The need that I have to clean, it may be just with water, it may be with just plain soap. That is more important than getting, because in public sector hospitals and medical colleges like us, we do have issues regarding the finance part component of it, but water is freely available, I feel. So for us, it is that the basic component, cleanliness, harping, because I feel infection prevention is much more better than starting the antibiotic. So that component is very important, because if I don't harp on that, it's very difficult for me to tell that why are you using this antibiotics and all that, because they see this is the best way. Okay, I don't have disinfectant, I don't have this, I need these higher antibiotics. Another thing which ma'am said about is the new curriculum. And UG, yes, we have said ki it is the program that is bought in a lot of new thing is not only having these components where I'm going in to do these electives, but even in the PG, what ma'am missed out and was that the district residency program has come in now. And that which we are going to implement with the students who are coming in February 22. And we had a meeting for Mumbai, because basically my institute is in Mumbai, how we are going to do it. And therefore, one component is, we always say it is there, but whether it's being implemented in my periphery, that component also is going to come into that particular part of that. So what I am teaching, whether those students who are going in, those of course are my PGs who are going in, the implementation part into the district level, and whether it's being done, I think they will be acting as a small messengers when I do. And another thing which has come in within NMC is there's another 3 months course which is made compulsory for clinical settings, like for a subject like us, microbiology, let's say the pre and para also, they're compulsory said that they need to go for 3 months, whether it is in the ICUs, whether it is in the medical and the this. So I think that is very important, that I can now send my students over there to see the other part of it. Because when I want to put in a policy, say for whether it is for my stewardship or something, what are the practices? I don't need to, because when we ask that, the clinicians go on the back foot. It is, they feel that we as microbiologists are teaching them. And I feel it is not that. We need to strengthen what is happening and how best we can make the necessary minute changes which is there. So this also, so there's a lot coming in through NMC, and it is in the goodness part which is over there. But till I put them into the question mark in the paper, because students are very smart, they will only lay weightage to what is going to come in the question. Okay, so even my paper setting, I think this component has to be part of, because that is a major component, whichever field I'm going to. So my question paper, whether it is in the medical, pre or whatever parameter, whether it is for the CET, for the PG CET or super, should have a good component of these, whether it is infection control, prevention, or whether it is my AMR or my stewardship. That should also be part, because students, though they know, unless they know it's going to be asked somewhere, they don't try to put it over there. I know it is not the right way, but that is what the mentality of the students is. Only if it's coming in this, they will sit to listen to you. A lot of harping is done on teachers, how to change our training, not only didactic, which is very good. Maybe it's not being completely done in that like small group teaching or something for whatever reason, which is over there. But a conscious effort has been done. And for that, I think NMC has to be commended for putting in so much to change the quality of my students, which are going to come up. I think the first batch will be coming up in a year or so. So how much it has helped, I think that is where it is going to make an effect. So there's a lot of component going. Only implementation as teachers, I feel we carry the moral responsibility, how I can put it forward and make these youngsters who are coming out and catch them young with the latest. And this has to be tackled because, and making them understand the concept, because when new drugs, no, they say wonder drugs. They forget that this is antibiotics. And when we talk of they put it across for all, whether virus, even for common cold. How many of our clinicians prescribe an antibiotic? It's so difficult to tell them, but it is, I really don't know why it is done. Even I think during COVID, basically ultimately it came down only it's a paracetamol. You have to then gauge, not put antibiotics. At that time, of course, we didn't know much, but there were misuse of antibiotics even during the 2 years that we saw over there. So the concept that microbes and antimicrobial, I think here, I would say you must stress more, it is an antibiotic. It is only, we are targeting this. Of course, we are not talking about the viruses. There also we do get resistance, but they take it synonymously, antibiotic, meaning any infection, I have to give it, which is not justified. So here, we as teachers, I think is very important that the younger batch which goes off, the concepts needs to be cleared over there. And as paper setters, we need to have more weightages on these points so that whatever we feel needs to go down and percolate down to the society has to be done when these people are younger with us. I think that's what I would like to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Amida ma'am rightly stressed, we must make sure AMR, AMS and infection control must be compulsory modules for undergraduates, all postgraduates, dental, pharmacists, paramedics, for everybody, Dr. Rama Chowdhury, ma'am, you are the Vice Dean of Dean of Research, Dean's University, Jaipur, and you are the former Dean Research, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. What is your opinion? How can we involve more our students into our efforts to tackle AMR? And how can institutions and other organizations support this effort?
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Abdul, for bringing out this very, very pertinent question. So before I start, I wanted to share some slides, few slides, which is talking about sustainable development goals. Because right now, everything is impacting, especially the topic we are taking today, antimicrobial resistance, is actually impacting the sustainable development goals. So when we talk about students, what is the students looking for? Any student, whether it is in medical field or management or school student, anywhere, we are looking for a better environment for future, a healthy, happier life. So that is where, United Nations came with these particular goals. So can you give me the share screen, permission?
Mayank, would you please give the permission to ma'am for share the screen?
So what I wanted to bring was like...
Sir, it is allowed.
Yes.
Okay.
So very important points have already been shared. And so what I want basically to understand is, I mean, every student to understand is that these 17 goals which were given by the, just give me a minute, yeah. So these 17 goals which were given by the United Nations were actually a blueprint for a better, more equitable, more sustainable life on our planet. And if you see, the third one is definitely directly related to good health and well-being. The medical students are playing very, very important role. But each and every one, whether it is clean water and sanitation, which has just been shared by others, affordable clean energy, decent work, innovations, infrastructure, and about climate action, partnerships, and peace. So everything is actually getting impacted by antimicrobial resistance. If you see, I will just give you one example. that how this economically this is actually affecting. So AMR is also reducing the GDP substantially. So even the economic growth is definitely affected. The health we know is affected. More AMR, more patients are going to stay in the hospital, more spread of drug-resistant infections, and not just in human beings. It is where medical student, agriculture student, or whether you talk about, veterinary student, or even general student, everyone has to be part of the whole campaign. No campaign can be successful without joining hands with each and everyone. So our medical students were, actively involved in this. We did a second research day at AIMS where we did different activities where we allowed them to make paintings on how to stop antimicrobial resistance. And I can say not just MBBS students, our nursing students were very happily joined and participated in that. They conducted different dialogues at different people. We had questionnaires which we created awareness. And when we told them that why they should be involved in campaign against AMR is because it is for their own good future. Because all these, especially these 5 goals I am showing here, are definitely getting affected. So it is not the question of medical students here. We are talking about the future of all students, future of younger generation. So when we make them understand that these small efforts are going to have much more impact world over, not just in your university or in your state or at national level, then they will be able to understand. And I think somewhere many people are not even aware about these SDG goals. And once we bring them that how AMR could push an additional burden and leading to so much of poverty, we are all knowing that if one person or patient gets AMR, antibiotic resistance infection, taking longer to treat, and they are actually have to lose all the money just to treat one patient, and their health is getting affected. The economy I have already shared, and more importantly, innovation, where your engineering students, where your students which are in the management, people are now IT people, they are coming with apps, whether it is to talk about AMR resistance or about antimicrobial stewardship, or even maintaining the data, entering the data. So everyone becomes part of it. And this is not just, again, as I said, not just one problem where it is a one health problem now. I'm sure Dr. Katoj is here and he will agree with me. ICMR, he was former General Director ICMR. And that is where, it is becoming very, very important that you have to really understand that this problem is not just medical problem. Every sector has to get involved into this. And this is where, it is going to accelerate progress in different countries, innovate the secure future. Collaboration is important. Innovations is important. Entrepreneurship is important. And DBT and BIREC is already promoting, entrepreneurships, startups, with now bringing and giving them incentive to come up with new ideas, new apps, or new, made in India products which can be used for One Health as well as for curbing the antimicrobial resistance. It has been named specifically AMR call. So I feel that now is the time. So what we have been doing at AIMS in research section, because Jaipur is little new to me, we have started a program called entrepreneurship, and we encourage the students right from MBBS student or the paramedical students to come up with new startups. We give them incentive and we give them the facilities so that they, whatever startup they want to start, they can put effort into that, and institute helps them to build up on that, even submit projects on that, so that they are able to contribute in different ways to prevent AMR. So it is not just, I just want to add, it's not just about medical students now anymore. As you rightly said, and you put up the whole thing, that each and every aspect of this problem is to be tackled by each and every student in whatever stream they are. So I think then only by partnering and by joining hands, we will be able to tackle this problem. and innovations has been done, because if you make something very dry and lecture based, no one wants to listen. So we made it interesting by quizzes, by playing a kind of street shows or street plays, and we made competition in that, and a lot of good awards were given, like we included nursing students also, so it was a big incentive. So they wanted to know more about AMR, and I'm happy that even in quiz our nursing students were equally good as medical students. So when we made by giving incentive, when we made them participate in such action, then they want to really learn also, and they want to disseminate also. But if you just tell them to read about subject, or maybe it is coming in your exam, they may not be that interested. So I have to really make it innovative so that the participation is good. So that is what I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rema. Ma'am introduced a different perspective, the role of innovation and entrepreneurship. So this concept we don't usually hear in AMR meetings, but the role of entrepreneurship, and we have got a very famous entrepreneur and management expert as our panelist, Mr. SP Dangayaj is a management magnet, a distinguished alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. You will see his name in a dozen director boards of major companies. And 10 years ago, if you call a management expert into an AMR meeting, people will tell you, why do we need a management expert? Today, nobody will ask, why do we need a management expert? Because entrepreneurship and innovation has become the cornerstone of our efforts to tackle AMR. Dangaji?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghaffur. First of all, I don't deserve, such accolades. First of all, congratulations to you for this wonderful book. And it has been a pleasure listening to all the dignitaries and all the doyens. I'm indeed very excited by your approach to AMR. And obviously, as Ramaji said just now, it is a question of opening the minds of the people who are connected to this particular field. We are seeing evolution and constant, I would say, mutation in the scientific thinking. It is not static. Science is never static. Science is always open, and science is always looking to new rational approaches that can solve a problem. As you know very well, the definition of startup in India is clearly relating to a kind of new solution to a problem being faced by the country or the world. The people who have been able to come up with unique solutions which were not existence, and then validate them and later scale them up internationally or nationally, are the ones who are a part of the startup ecosystem. And the fact that there are nearly 100 unicorns from India also goes to show that this particular concept of startup has caught up. It is time that in AMR also we enthuse and we ignite the minds of the people who will be able to come up with the solutions. I mean, first of all, the problem of antimicrobial resistance has come due to obviously overuse or abuse of some of the viable solutions. I will not like to say that antibiotics per se are bad. Antibiotics are needed to tackle certain types of problems. And if the solution is in form of one or the other antibiotic, it obviously will be put to use. The problem has occurred that there has been a kind of segmented or myopic viewpoint by most of the stakeholders. The fact is that we are now looking at One Health, or we may call it as integrative health. We are looking at a combination of factors that are impacting the human society, the veterinary kingdom, and obviously the biological world. All of them are interconnected. When we are talking about the use of antibiotics, as say Dr. Katoch and many other experts have always said, that it is not only in the human beings that antibiotics are being used. As a matter of fact, internationally it is said 60 to 70% of antibiotics are used in the animals. And when we give the antibiotics to the animals, for one reason or the other, we are giving rise to traces and residues which come into the stream of dairy products or the meats and things like that. Or if we use that in some other form, eventually it lands up in our bodies, which, as a matter of fact, creates this AMR, which is a trouble that we are all facing. So first of all, I would like to, to say that the students that are there in the medical colleges or in the healthcare system colleges or other places had to be given a small, idea about as to what is happening in the healthcare front. One Health or One Nation, One Health, whatever name we may give it, integrative health. This is something which has to be passed on to them. I'm very glad that the National Medical Commission that has come out and the curricula that they have, say maybe created is something to open the minds of the people, to give a kind of a tentative or a basic exposure to different medicinal sciences which are available and approved in the country, and then use them. Now, once they are open to many of the rational sciences, they will then decide what is going to be the comparative efficacy or comparative effectiveness. So, in a way, this is something that is going to be good. The second important point that I would like to make is that over the last 75 years, public health has received very little attention, or if it has received some kind of an official declaration on ground. Public health is something which is required to be made an important part of all the programs, whether that is for the medical or dental or nursing. Everywhere public health is important. And when you talk about public health is water, sanitation, air, everything. I personally believe that public health is very important, and this is something which is not only confined to the medical colleges. I think it is something which has to become a part and parcel of curricula of the higher schools and then the colleges. If these two things happen, I personally think that public health part will reduce the incidence of the problems that we have got. And obviously, when we are saying open-mindedness, it will open many entrepreneurship and innovation opportunities. I'll just take an example of one or two, say two things that I have come across. So two very brilliant IIT students, IIT pass outs, who are now working in the US after not having done their PhDs over there, are now talking about biome. They are talking about coming up with the right type of gut biome. So I had a con call with them, and they talked about that solution, which appears to be feasible in many of the intractable bug resistance situations. So in this fashion, I personally think the entrepreneurship opportunities which are being opened up, or which can be opened up with a very open and a rational framework by the government of India, is going to help us in tackling the AMR issue. Today in the morning, I had an interaction with agricultural university faculty members there in one of the venues, and there I talked to them about AMR, and I talked to them, say about obviously the One Health, and I talked about all of the facets. Believe me or not, they were indeed very excited that this is something that say we were not at all aware of. The kind of antibiotic consumption by say the animals is something that say they have never looked at. So awareness, say not only in the medical colleges, even at other places. And I'm very glad that the technology is available today, and we can create those modules through AMR. And these can be given in simple, as you have said, simple, legible, easy to understand kind of a format. And this is something, so that can go a very long way. Fifthly, I would like to say the innovation and entrepreneurship opportunities are immense. Well, I mean, we need not remain confined to only one science. We should be, as I said, open. We should be, we should be able to create a congenial atmosphere for innovations in many other areas. For example, when we look at viral issues, I mean, when we talk about AMR, we are talking about microbial resistance, and three types of microbes, which are, I would say, which are responsible for 90% plus: bacterial, viral, and then fungal. When I look at viral and when I look at the antivirals, I find that we are not yet able to succeed much with the antivirals through, say, the biomedical route. And as we have seen in case of corona, we have, say, succeeded with something like paracetamol, which is a very, very old, say maybe antipyretic. But, we have gone to vaccines, say, as the only solution. Vaccines are providing specific immunity, and vaccines can be made in different ways. Now, that kind of a thing can open up specific immunity providers. Vaccines can be called as specific immunity providers. Now, these can be made by many different methods, and a rational framework Dr. Katoch, will agree with me, a rational, a scientific framework for, validating a kind of a specific immunity product coming, say one or the other method. Like, today we have got mRNA, earlier we had some other method. So some third, fourth method can be done, and we can have things which can tackle the virus, because we have understood that bacteria can be tackled by antibiotics, but so we are not in a position to tackle the issue of virus so far. So we need to look beyond and see what we can do. Ordinarily, as you know very well, sir, every maybe person is looking for a solution and a cure. I mean, that is how the world works. And therefore, if you go to the doctor and if he finds that there is a possibility that there can be some secondary infection, he is tempted and he is probably motivated, is pressurized to give an antibiotic. Now, this is a kind of a thing which I guess medical colleges they can tackle that. So when there are viral issues, it is better to to avoid bacteria. So in nutshell, there are huge business opportunities because people are looking for solutions. And when you are talking about solution, you require to create a congenial, a comfortable, and in an enabling atmosphere for innovations and entrepreneurship to take place. Once somebody comes up with a product, then there has to be again a very congenial and a convenient, though scientific, method of taking that particular solution to the market. So clearly there are three stages: development of a solution or a product in the lab, or say in the factory or somewhere else. Second is to see how it can be taken to the market. That means you require a proper regulatory approval procedure. Without that, I mean, you can't give a health product or healthcare product straight away to the consumer. So that is the second. And thirdly, if it has passed, say the second, round, then there has to be funds availability, finance availability for scaling it up and then making that benefit available to a whole lot of people, bringing, say scale, economy of scale, and then giving it at an affordable cost to the people. So in nutshell, I think there is a lot to be done by all of us. And I would like to compliment Dr. Ghafoor for, doing this yeoman service to the community and the country. We should all get together, use the technology. For example, say today, there is abundant availability of technology to pass, e-book and things like that. Go on, creating the awareness at different platforms to say that we can tackle it by a 360 degrees vision in terms of research, in terms of technology, in terms of business, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of scaling up, and obviously helping the policymakers to arrive at a framework which is fair, transparent, egalitarian, I would say, equitable, and obviously promotive of a whole lot of things that can benefit our own country as well as the others. So thank you very much, for giving me this chance to speak.
Thank you, Dangaichi, for giving us the entrepreneurship perspective on tackling AMR. We'll come back to Dr. Katoch. Sir, how can we help medical students collaborate with medical societies like IMA, organizations like AMR Declaration Trust and other organizations, research organizations like ICMR, DBT, Virology Institute during their training? And that will help us to tackle the challenge of AMR, because the students will get new ideas and we need new ideas from the students. How can we get that done, sir?
Actually, Dr. Ghafoor Sahab, that's the best part is create, some projects for them, and when you can do the projects, during your postgraduate training. Undergraduate, you can start actually, but at that time, your ideas are very superficial. But I think I think Dr. Amita said, you should start right at the high school level. So they may be very bright. They are very bright at high school, and then if they get the idea during undergraduate also, they will do something. But the point is, practical sides that what project anybody can take up actually. Say if it is a medical student, very simple, they will have a very straight way of working at the medical problem. Now, if he is a microbiologist, he or she has the opportunity to do a microbiology project, again dealing with the resistance, transferable drug resistance. That's what I did in my MD days in 1976, 77. My MD thesis was on there was no thesis at that time, but we published papers actually on the transferable drug resistance. and working right in the same AIMS department, actually, with the position was. That was why, in fact, my first entry into microbiology. My first paper was, of course, in cardiology. That was a cardiac tachyarrhythmias as a resident. But when I changed track to a science, it was not drug resistance actually. So I looked at the transferable drug resistance. So that way, transferable drug resistance and non-transferable drug resistance, how is spreading? This all, these technologies and tools are known actually. And people have done projects over the ages, whichever method of doing it was. But it's a tunnel. They were not linked to a problem solution component, which Dangayaji is pointing out. See, taking interest out, and I think that Rama also pointed out, if there's something, if there's a question of interest, they will do it. Okay. So first, you're sensitizing the students quite young by doing different type of modules. One, your ebook or the same type of a small module, a small ebook may come for a high school people. Then ultimately, if they're triggered out and they think, yeah, this is a problem I have to work on. And this is a very attractive term. AMR is a very attractive term, but the people shoot in the dark, I tell you. They keep shooting in all directions without looking at what they're doing actually. So there, if they get the projects which work with their guides, but they develop their project, they can get independent grants also from different agencies for working on them. With the societies, they can work. So we help them in framing good small studies, by which they showcase, they publish, and they lead to a solution. I gave you example of that drug resistance episodes in US. Okay. Same type of thing happening here also. See, for example, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, the trauma center, where Dr. Mishra played a very critical role in building it up. But the best part was the empowerment given to the nurses, the command, the power given to them. So they could take decisions. And here the people are coming with all complex traumas, but the infection rate was minimum, I tell you. Okay. I've looked at the data from different parts of the country also. So in a government hospital, government institution, heavy burden thing, but in discipline enforced. So that means a science nursing student can take a science doing on that already. By this step, how could you stop the transmission? By this step, how you could see a particle change. So medical students looking at a solution through his or her intervention, her project, small piece, which tells you something new, which tells you an idea how it is spreading, how it is getting created. And then what is this? If it is not a medical student, it can be on the cost economics of it, that how much you're going to spend extra actually. And as Dr. Rama linked to your entire development goal. So other student working in another university in the humanities or in the economics, taking up a project on the economy side of it. What it means. So the first, Dr. Gafur, I come to the same basic issue, the right kind of information, how many people know that how much is the resistance, how it is harmful to us or it doesn't bother us. We should not be worried about something which is not bothering us. And then how we can coexist that kind of projects. Then secondly, what we do and the better hygiene in the today's context. See Sushruta in his time doing the surgeries, their success rate was so high, doing complex surgeries, the grafting, the things, doing everything. No drugs, okay? I've seen the best surgeons in Jaipur also, the PK Sethi, hardly any antibiotic being used. He was one of the best orthopedicians this country produced, okay? But there was a tough actually. You could not go to the theater so easily when he was the chief actually. So there is a purely by discipline. So that means the science today, not only looking at the bug, not looking at the genome, not looking at the other side of the story, but looking at the interventions. So projects, Dr. Kapoor, we will help the students to build projects, maybe in the medical colleges, non-medical institutions, medical faculties, non-medical faculties. And then also what is how you can do an integrated way, like Dr. Dangachaji was not telling very explicitly, the homeopathy has no sorts actually. They are the same vaccines which you do the vaccines here and they put the no sort, they call them no sorts actually. And they immunize and they also work. So if it is a viral, small infections going here and there, why you should look for the antibiotic at all actually? But then alertness in people, that is one evolution we have to drive through your mission like this. But the second thing is doing practical projects. By doing this could be prevented. By doing this, the need could be shot down. So actual studies, lot of actual studies happening from this country. I tell you why we fail all the time. we have not generated our own data, on own generation, new information to the extent which excites a common practitioner, or which excites a common policymakers. So whatever we talk is something from somewhere abroad actually. If you're talking of a danger from the animals, it's a data from abroad. Okay. I confronted these guys in some of those meetings actually. They are no data from India. What the hell you are doing here then actually? See, then you can't push a solution on the animal husbandry people without a data from India actually. So I think Dr. Gafur, the challenge is now challenge, and not said the challenge, the opportunities to generate a lot of Indian data. That in turn will generate a lot of the leaders for tomorrow, whether in the medical side, biomedical side, on the non-medical side, economy side, where they'll see opportunity in doing everything differently actually. So I think that's the time, this is a time to push for those changes. Say, for example, we have a virology labs.
9 o'clock.
Yes. We have the virology labs set up everywhere. Those virology labs, when we established in 1910 to 13, when as a secretary, I pioneered that actually, the entire dream. My goal was only the medical people should diagnose viral infections easily in their medical colleges. I was not looking that, you're going to head with a new pandemic. That's a different outboard. It helped there actually. So now, for example, if the virology diagnosis, now we had 3,000 labs in the country who are doing the virology diagnosis, even by the molecular biology. There's no that kind of India I never thought earlier. 3,000 will multiply to 6,000. But if like what Dangyaj Sahab is pointing out, if you have a virology, the test small platforms available for picking up everything everywhere, and you have alert people that I need not take the antibiotics, then you have to go on the parallel side for both. Those alert people not going on the side, you don't need the antibiotic. But then, the doctor is concerned with your welfare. He or she doesn't want you to die actually. So antibiotic is given out of fear actually. And the people also take out of fear. Yeah, I should prevent myself. So if there is a specific diagnosis available right in the small town, it is doable. There is economy in that. So there are people who invest into the tests. They have a lot of money. Secondly, the people get the right kind of treatment. So this is the kind of projects which have to be thought about and then pushed, not as a theoretical talks, actual studies being done, and they're all doable, Dr. Gafur. So it is a real science, real world science, not the talks, not the information sharing all the time, but the real life examples. I think they're all doable actually. They are all doable, I think, and I think I'm telling you, this is one of the best seminars I've seen, because right from Dr. Mohanan to Dr. Oman to Dr. Amita, Dr. Rama and Dangyaj Sahab, everybody gave an idea, a different way of doing it. And I think I've enjoyed it very much. So I first must thank you for connecting me today and pulling me into today's deliberations. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, sir. And earlier experts used to say, if you know everything about syphilis, you know everything about medicine. Then it became diabetes, then it became HIV. But now the more we discuss about AMR, it's becoming more complex and more complex. And if you know everything about AMR, not only you know everything about medicine, you know about politics, economics, business, and everything else. And we have got Uma ma'am. Ma'am, how can we help students to collaborate with medical societies, organizations, and everybody else?
Well, we have so many society, each of the medical specialties have their own specialties. I think at a very early stage, maybe an undergraduate, when they are an undergraduate, they may be invited to present papers, and make short presentations. And as Dr. Katok, Professor Katok was telling me that, how to involve students. They have small ICMR projects, summer projects that is granted by ICMR, right? They do it during the summer, 1 or 2 months during the summer. They can be, motivated to take, they may be a small part. Just ask them to look at the resistance pattern for 1 month, okay? Just go and look at the prescription practices for a month, that will give them insights and, kindle interest in them. I think they can go and present in, one of the societies or other things. I'm sure that will be welcome, information for anybody. whichever part of the country. So I think he was saying there's no data from our country. I think this kind of small projects can be given even to an undergraduate students, leave alone the postgraduate students. And I think basically teaching is an art. You just go and give a lecture on antimicrobial resistance and stewardship, people may not even listen. I think we need to make it more, animated and give real case scenarios, real case scenarios, what happened because of this resistance and what was the consequence of this resistance and other things that will, create an impact on them. Means whenever they see a case, real life case, I think it makes a difference to the student rather than, a classroom lecture, 1 hour lecture, which is so boring for the student. So encouraging them to be part of, professional bodies, encouraging them to be, they may not be eligible to be member of a professional body when they are undergraduates, but as postgraduates, yes. So you ask them, encourage them to present papers and take part in conferences like this, where, there is exchange of ideas and other things. One big chunk that we leave out is the veterinary students. I don't think there is anything in their curriculum to, address this problem. As of now, as I see the veterinary curriculum, there's nothing to address this problem. I don't think there is any innovation brought in the veterinary curriculum. So I think that should also be, taken into consideration. The veterinary students, even, they should be sensitized to all this and make them, considering that so much of antibiotics is used in veterinary practice. We do not know what is being used in India. As Sir was saying, we have no real Indian data. So their curriculum content and also should be modified. Students should be encouraged to, produce papers, do short projects, and then if they're going to develop some apps, simple apps, they may be engineering students, it's okay. But if they have something related to health, or biomedical student, a management student, something related to health and something related to, antimicrobials and usage or something like that, and predictive modeling, if you can do something on predictive modeling, I think that will be great. I think that way you can engage students. The young minds are moldable. In my opinion, the young minds are moldable. So I think it is only a question of, evincing their interest and, hand holding them and taking them along. Thank you. Dr. Ghaffur, you're frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Yeah.
He'll connect back. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's back.
He's come back. Yeah. Thanks, Ghaffur. I think you're not audible. Unmute yourself.
Why the panelists of the second session join, and we request the panelists of the first session to stay back so we can have a more comprehensive. Dr. Ashwini, would you please invite the panelists of second session?
Sure, sir. Okay. So let's move on to our second session. The session is Mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. We have our esteemed panelists with us. Dr. Dilip Mathai, he is advisor to Apollo University, Chittor. Dr. Amita Joshi, she is Vice Dean, Grant Medical College, Mumbai. We have with us Dr. GPS Gill, who is a Director of Research at Gadvasu, which is a veterinary institute, and Dr. Anand Bhan, who is bioethics expert. And I request Dr. Uma ma'am to please, and other panelists to please stay with us and join the discussion. Over to you, Ghaffur, sir.
Thank you, Ashwini. We will ask a question to Dr. Dilip Mathai, who is a professor of infectious diseases, for the senior most ID consultant in the country. He was also the dean of the Apollo Medical School, and now he's the advisor to the same institution. Dilip sir, you are there? Hello?
He's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा. Not able to hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I think you need to put forth the question once again. Yeah.
Dilip sir, how can we discussed about how can we involve the medical students? Now, how can we introduce innovative methodologies, innovative techniques to involve the students? And they can be advocates, they can be leaders of tackling antimicrobial resistance. Because for the last 20 years, we try to educate the public, we try to educate our seniors, and we find it difficult to educate the public and seniors. But students have got young mind, budding mind. How can we make them leaders of tackling AMR? How can we get them more and more involved into the AMR field?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you. I have been listening to the first session as well, but I just want to put in a few points for the students. Fundamentally, I tell my medical students that, antibiotics and AMR is a natural occurrence. If you say that AMR happens naturally, then what is the problem? The problem is because you guys, including me, are enhancing the rapidity of the development of the resistance. So you guys, please understand this. So that is what I tell them. So that is what is happening. What we tell them is the more antibiotics you use, the less effective they become. And that is the antibiotic paradox. So you guys, you must understand it is for your future. I was born in 1950, and I have reasons to believe that my mother developed typhoid fever when she was carrying me. And why do I believe so? Well, she used chloramphenicol, and I've got the gray hairs now. Anyway, so because it produced the gray baby syndrome. But that's not the issue. But what I'm trying to say is that antibiotics have been there. Now, if you've got Salmonella typhi of 1950, pure, pristine, virgin bacteria susceptible to chloramphenicol, amoxicillin, and subsequently developed sulfonamides as such. And then you moved into an era of resistance being seen there. And now you've come back to an era where you're not seeing resistances to chloramphenicol and ampicillin. So what does it tell you guys? It just tells you that the very simple Salmonella was made to be resistant to chloramphenicol. And then it is after removing chloramphenicol selective pressure, you had your Cipro selective pressure. And then you come back to Salmonella. Don't you understand this? So what am I trying to teach you? Brothers, antibiotics are good, but not to be misused. Antibiotics should be used, but not to be misused. Sir, where are we misusing it? Brother, you are misusing it for several reasons when you don't need antibiotics. So this is what I emphasize on the medical students. Now, I'm 70 years old, maybe Katak Saab and I am in the same age group. But what I'm saying is somehow we will manage to move on. But my two grandchildren, one in the US and one in India, are not going to have any more antibiotics, I tell them. So what do? Second point I want to say is that you guys would have to ensure that fight it today. Prevent infections in the first place. What do you mean, sir? Prevent infections in the first place. To prevent infections in the first place, don't use, let's say, urinary catheter or an IV catheter unnecessarily. Or at least you stop the spread of the resistant bugs in the hospital. So please don't tell me something else. I don't know about resistant bugs in the hospital. And I'm telling you this, nobody is teaching. I'm saying it with the open heart, including me. Nobody is teaching the burden of antimicrobial resistance. They all will teach you the burden of antimicrobial resistance globally, nationally, regionally. But what is happening in your own hospital? Nobody really teaches you that. Now, students must first understand the burden of the disease in their own hospital. And that is what I tell my microbiology department. Please give me an antibiogram. Please give me the rank order of 5 drug bugs that I should look after. I teach everybody by saying MRSA. Okay, amongst the gram positive. Amongst the gram-negative, E. coli, okay. Klebsiella, okay. But what is my worrying bug? My worrying bug is the Acinetobacter and the Pseudomonas in the hospital. I tell them this, please give me the burden of your antimicrobial resistance program in your hospital, in your teaching hospital, in your corporate hospital. Now, what do I mean by this? So in the community, we just cannot control, because that's unless the medical students are taught properly. That's a different ballgame altogether. Several of you have addressed that issue, but I will just 1 or 2 points if time permits. But the problem is in the hospital. Now, these medical students, what is the problem in the hospital? The problem in the hospital is when if I'm treating a cancer patient, if I'm treating a patient who is having a cardiac surgery, or if I'm, as alluded to, if I'm having a patient with a trauma coming in, or let's say transplant patients, these are the guys who mankind, with the discoveries of science, have prolonged the longevity of the human being. So today, my longevity, even though I'm 71 years of age, my longevity, my lifespan, I'm thinking will be 83, simply because I've got access to medical, and I know how to handle my own I've not taken antimicrobials for the past 3 years. And I know my bug. I'm not saying my bug in my GI tract is susceptible to all the antibiotics. I may be carrying 5%, 10% beta-lactamase resistant strains, but not a carbapenem resistant strain, not any of this, even a cipro resistant strain. Then who's creating it? So this is the concept that you have to tell the medical students. Brothers, antibiotics have certainly over the years improved the lifespan of people, has improved the quality of life of people in terms of wanting, and also the survivorship of treatment for newer diseases that we are seeing, cancer and even prolonging that. So this is the second point. The third point which I want to tell them all, and my teachers particularly, ma'am, we have got 25 classes of antibiotics, classes. In that classes, you have got another 23 or 10 or 15 drugs. And I'm telling you, we don't have 25 hours of teaching antibiotics in the pharmacology or in the microbiology. We all talk about horizontal and vertical integration. There is no integration and there is no horizontality in the teaching. If penicillins are taught in the first year in the microbiology, you will have penicillins being taught again in pharmacology. Now, the bug is there, strep pneumonia is there in microbiology, the same bug is taught in pharmacology. Now, we are not focusing on what we have to do. Why can't the microbiologists and the pharmacologists take a joint lecture and have a joint practical class? Otherwise, you are never going to bring in the horizontal or vertical integration. Now, having said this, you ask, fourth point I'm saying, don't evaluate them on color reactions, don't evaluate them on Vidal, or don't evaluate them on any of those things. Evaluate them on competencies, on how to use an antibiotic. Evaluate them on how are you going to use antibiotics prophylactically for surgery, and how are you going to use antibiotics empirically, and how are you going to use antibiotics if the organism is identified. Now that is what, then that competency testing is not done even in MD General Medicine. I am an examiner for MD General Medicine. I can pass my MD General Medicine exam not even knowing the treatment of typhoid fever, not even knowing, and where does a general medicine MD guy understand microbiology? They don't understand microbiology, but they understand how to use an ECG, how to use the treadmill, how to use the echo, how to read a chest X-ray, how to read CT scan, which I say is pornography. But all this is what I'm trying to say. They're taught differently. We have to tell them, please, this is the antibiogram. These are the standard. This is the panel of antibiotics that we are testing for gram-positives and gram-positive. What is the point in giving phosphomycin for a skin and soft tissue infection susceptibility? I would use it for a urinary tract infection. Explain to them why they're using 12 antibiotics in the panel or 6 antibiotics in the panel. They're not understanding that. They're not understanding. Katoch Saab has said about, yes, sir, you are funding research. There is now, after you are maybe in the last 5 years, there were the students program, etc. They're funding 10,000 rupees. But sir, nobody is calling back for that research publication. I get the 10,000 rupees, no problem. And I do the project, but nobody calls for it. The second problem, sir, in the research of organizations in my country, there is no succession planning. You contribute a lot to, let's say, I did for you, ICMR's ESBL resistant, but I try to develop successors after me, but from my own money or from institutions' money. ICMR must ensure that there is a lineage of people going after and continuing the services of antimicrobial resistances as such. Then the last two more points, sir, it is a question of interdisciplinary collaboration. I prescribe, my pharmacist gives out the medicine. Now you look at this. I have got 40,000, 60,000 seats in MBBS. I got 40,000 seats in pharmacy in this country. 1,500 pharmacy institutions, 600 medical colleges. Now, what is the how much of antibiotics is taught to the pharmacist? Very little. It's a 4-year program. You call for the curriculum. And you see, because my professor of pharmacology in most medical colleges would teach the basic science class in pharmacology. You will find that they don't know much, but on the other hand, they know how to make pharmaceutical preparations, pharmaceutical legal law, etc. So this is what I talk about, interdisciplinary training. Veterinary medicine, not exposed, we all talk about One Health. Veterinary medicine students not exposed to pharmacology as much or not exposed to medical science. So they don't know. We don't know, and we don't teach our students anything about One Health of veterinary medicine or that of pharmacy. And the last point I wanted to make, state was, how can we engage the medical students for the future to preserve because for them it is life-saving. Maybe for me, not so much life-saving, but for them, in a matter of 10 years, they will surely get into a problem with the community. Pharmaceutical companies, as Dr. Katoch Saab said, they are spending more on HIV. There are more HIV drugs being discovered each year than antimicrobials and than antibacterials. You have got, because of course, they don't get the returns. Pharmaceutical companies, you have to understand that they are not going to invest because they make 4 times the money from a cardiac drug or an anti-aging drug. Why would they want to invest in antimicrobials? And therefore, you have to look at taxpayers, you have to look at ways and means of incentivizing them. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. But having said so, how can these people, my grandchildren included, protect their future? The only way that I think is they have to understand and tell the parents, grandparents, you guys have misused my antibiotics, which are meant for me. You have to be activists. You have to take the father to the street and grandfather of the doctor prescribing these medicines to the street and tell them, you are killing my future. Don't say doctors are not activists. Gafur Saab is a big activist. Now we have got the Jaipur problem that is happening. The whole street is flooded with activists. Somebody must go out there because it is an existential threat for A, bacteria. They will easily answer it by getting more resistance mechanism. B, antibiotics, the pharmaceutical companies are not going to do anything because there's no money. And we humans are the only one who has to face this existential threat. And so, my dear children and grandchildren, please go up there, write about it, speak about it, debate about it, conduct role plays, do whatever you can, but alter your future. If you do not control your own destiny, no one else will. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip Saab. 13 years ago, when a dozen of us infectious disease physicians founded the Infectious Disease Society of India, Dilip Saab was the president of the society. I was the AMR committee in charge. And when we conducted AMR meetings, the halls were full. And then there were too many meetings. People stopped attending AMR meetings. Last year, when we did an AMR session, 8 a.m. in the morning, only me, Dilip Saab, and two attendees were there. And that means, as Dilip Saab has mentioned, we need to change our strategies. And that's why this time we have started calling entrepreneurs, management experts, because we need to expand our dimensions of tackling antimicrobial resistance. It's not a scientific problem, it's a socio-economic and political problem. We have Dr. JPS Gill, who is a well-known AMR expert in the veterinary field. He's the director of research, Gadwasu, Punjab, which is a premium veterinary institution in the country. Dr. Gill?
Yeah.
How can we involve, yes, sir. How can we involve veterinary students in our major campaign against AMR?
Yeah. Thank you, Abdul, for inviting me for this talk. And I have been listening to all the experts' views from the start of the session. Thanks, everybody, for giving their expert views. So, being a veterinarian and working in a premier veterinary institute, the Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Sciences University. So, there are some misconceptions about the AMR in the veterinary animal husbandry practices. I just want to give the few points. In the veterinary medicine courses, there is one department of veterinary public health, which has full-fledged courses on antimicrobial resistance. For PG, there is antimicrobial resistance course, full course. In undergraduate, it is module. We are just checking making the new curriculum. We checked that the antimicrobial resistance is taught in 4 years in one way or other. So full-fledged courses in microbiology, veterinary public health, on food safety, zoonosis, and AMR are the major things. But in the animal husbandry practices, the AMR problem is multifaceted. One, we discussed in the medical, what we do in the medical hospitals, the hospital problem or case problems where we do give the antibiotics. But in the veterinary medicine students, we have to educate the other 3 ways. One is the biosecurity. We give keep our animal healthy, infection-free. We keep all biosecurity. We didn't need the antibiotics. So we teach the students on AMR that we didn't need the antibiotics if we do the care of their health. So we work on their health issues, vaccinations. We give more emphasis on the preventive medicine. There is a full-fledged subject, preventive medicine, in the veterinary medicine, where we educate the students for that. Then the other 2 big problems are the use of feed, antibiotics in the feed of the animals, particularly in the poultry and swine. So we need to educate along with the students, we need to educate the industry people, feed millers. We do the training courses. We guide them. We guide the farmers also that don't use this type of feed or this type of the feed. So students are trained for guiding the farmers, training of the farmers so that they get well aware of that they don't use the antibiotics. So the 4th way is the problem is the bio-waste, the waste of the dairy farms. The antibiotics resistant genes comes in the fecal, the dung and the dumps, and they are used as a manure in the field, and they spread the infection. So the research our research activities on the this issue are on a very big way, that how to prevent the farm soil bacteria to get the antibiotic resistance. So these are the few things which we guide the students mainly. And the One Health problem. The One Health in our my Gadwasu, there is a full-fledged one institute that's the center of One Health, and we have online course of One Health, in which medical, dentist, environmentalist, forest people, agriculture students, they come here for that one online course of 1 year, in which the AMR is a one major module. So One Health, because we need to work together in all the fields. So we should not work in the silos. The students, my students, veterinary students, go to the PGI and the medical colleges. Medical college students in the Ludhiana, my institute, come for few days work in the SPM students come to my institute. If we work multidisciplinary, then we came to know in what area the veterinarians are doing and what area the medicals are doing. So these are the few things I just want to, that in the animal sciences, the hospital type of infection, in our hospital, we are doing the antibiotic audits, the usage pattern. So when we start this type of the work and check that the first problem, major problem, where the antibiotics are used in the hospital is the mastitis. Because the livestock industry depends upon economy. If we have a milk, then farmer will keep the animal. If there is mastitis, the udder will be destroyed, there will be no milk. So all the veterinarians or the para-veterinarian or the farmer give maximum drugs in the mastitis treatment. And it comes in the milk and it comes to the human beings, the resistance comes to the human being. So we are using the alternative medicines. My students are given the groups in my farm. If there is mastitis cases, the turmeric powder or the other things, we have my institute have one Ayush funded herbal garden and the project. The Ayurvedic drugs are prepared here and they are applied in the farmer. And second, we are also giving course of some trainings on the use of homeopathy drugs to control of some infections. That's I want to say something.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. And earlier, Dr. Dilip Saab, and I thought that, we are now introducing modules in the human world. Actually, Veterinary University has already introduced modules on AMR in the veterinary world. And we all know that the veterinary field is as important or more important than the human world in the production of AMR and in the efforts to control the AMR. And veterinary industry is so powerful, and any efforts that we do to control the AMR needs the support and active collaboration of the veterinary industry. Now we have Dr. Anand Ban. Dr. Anand Ban is a very famous bioethics expert. He is an editor of many bioethics and other ethics journals. And he's also a TV personality. Every day you will see him on TV on various issues. Dr. Ban? Anand?
Hi, Dr. Gafur. Yes, good evening.
Hi, Anand. Good evening. Now, we all discussed about how we can involve medical students, management students, veterinary students in our efforts. Shouldn't we involve art students, engineering students, social science students? How can we involve them?
So thank you. Very interesting discussion. I've certainly learned a lot from all of the expert panelists. And I think, to your point, since there's been a lot of discussion we've already had on involving medical students, health professional students, I think what makes most sense for any individual is when you try to personalize the issue. So if we are talking about involving students from other disciplines, we need to personalize the issue of antimicrobial resistance. What does this mean for that person, their family, their communities? And why is this not just about the data that we might throw at them? Why is it not just about that person who might be struggling in the ICU because they're the kind of infection that they have is now resistant to most medications that we have available? But make this about why this is something that they need to worry about. Because if this is something which happens to them, their immediate family or their community, how this is going to be really difficult to deal with. So if we need to have those kind of narratives coming through more, And I think there is now enough evidence that we can leverage for that. So if we can go beyond the literature, it's not just enough to write up articles in medical journals. We need to take this discussion through public engagement into fora where people will understand that this is not an issue which doctors need to worry about or health professionals need to worry about. This is an issue which everyone needs to worry about because this impacts them and their well-being. And I think people have understood during COVID that there are constraints sometimes in medicine, that they have seen it happen, that there might not be beds available. Simple things like oxygen might not be available in the case of an emergency. And in many ways, AMR is an emergency already, and it could get even worse. Right. And if there is a scenario where people need medication, but that medication is ineffective, then there's little that the medical professionals can do to be able to assist them. So I think that certainly is an important component. It's also important because there are issues in terms of expectations, right? And many medical professionals struggle with this, especially those in private practice, I guess, because there is an expectation for you to prescribe when someone comes to you. If someone comes to you with a cold, cough, fever, if you just tell them that this is likely just a viral illness and it will, you just need to perhaps get some rest, drink some hot fluids, take care of not going out, wear a mask if it's respiratory in nature, but you don't need to take anything beyond that. You don't need medication, maybe except a paracetamol for your fever. Most people will leave disappointed and feel that you are not giving them correct medical advice or that you're not a good doctor. And so this urge to prescribe medication when it's not indicated is part of the challenge, right? So that is, of course, also because there is an expectation of receiving medication, of receiving an IV drip, etc. So what can we do to dispel that, right? And how do we leverage students to bring about that change becomes important. It's also key because the conversations need to also go away from just clinical focus of, the clinical interaction with singular patient to more of a public health policy discussion, and make people understand that if we're not careful in these domains, then we are limiting the possibility of us to be able to respond if this becomes a further worse issue. But that will require us to, of course, work with the entire ecosystem. You need to, as rightly discussed earlier, work with medical professionals, nursing professionals, paramedical students, but also frontline health workers. That's one group that we really need to find ways of communicating these messages to. If we can go out to our primary health centers, to our sub-centers, the health and wellness centers, get our community health officers who are now being deployed as a new cadre all across the country, largely to be actually taking a lead in these conversations and normalizing this acceptance that antimicrobials are not the norm when we are treating patients. They need to be only taken when indicated. But also, of course, we need strong governance and regulation. If you and I or anyone else can walk into a pharmacy and basically buy any antibiotic, often without a prescription, if there is rampant use of antibiotics in the food industry, then that tells us something that there is an issue with regulation as well, right? And regulation is not just a function of the medical profession, right? In terms of us being careful about, as doctors, of not over-prescribing or not prescribing when there is a lack of evidence. But it's also about how do we ensure that it is regulated from the perspective of the state. It's regulated from the perspective of the trades which are involved in selling medication, so the pharmacies, for example, and also ensuring that people understand that they should be careful about taking medication, especially when it's not indicated. Now, students, as you refer to the various disciplines that you talked about, can help us understand, right? So the social sciences can help us understand things like, well, what kind of information communication campaigns do we need to run so that people have a more nuanced understanding of these issues? How do we make sure that the communication is going out in a way that people are understanding? How do we work with media students for that? How do we make all of these individuals key stakeholders in the change that we want, especially from an advocacy perspective? Building campaigns will take time, but if we restrict it only to the medical ecosystem, I don't think it will work. So that's where I think this message needs to go out, and organizing, of course, conversations such as the one that you've convened today with the AMR Trust is extremely important in that, because we really need to now talk about recognizing this is an issue, but also a societal response to it, which will require all of these other disciplines that you talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Talking about involving other specialities, last year, Ms. Parbasha Mazumdar is an anthropologist working with us. She met me last year, and she expressed the interest of doing a PhD on the role of anthropology and AMR. And I really wanted to ask her what's the role of anthropology in AMR. I did not ask her because I consider myself to be a so-called simple AMR expert. But, probably, such social science experts like anthropologists are very important in our efforts to tackle AMR. Ms. Parbasha, you are there? Parbasha Majumdar? Yeah, no, fine. So we'll carry on. Now, Anand, I'll ask you the next question, the very important question. We all talk about ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT, wonderful an app, but with its own limitations. How can we utilize technology, the new technology, emerging, highly intelligent, smart technology in our efforts to tackle AMR?
Sure. So I think all of us recognize that, technology has its advantages, certainly has its disadvantages as well. But right now we are in a situation where connectivity, technology access, availability of information, smartphone access, availability of data is increasing almost on a daily basis, right? I work with colleagues in many parts of rural India, especially in the central part of the country. And we see this happening in many parts of the villages that we worked in, that there are more and more people now with smartphones. There are more and more people imbibing information through technology. But what kind of sources of information is always a bit of a concern, right? Because it's likely that these are Instagram reels or WhatsApp forwards that they are receiving. And that, of course, as we know, again, from our experience pre-COVID and during COVID, there are challenges with the sanctity, fidelity, and veracity of that information. So we need to leverage technology, certainly from a knowledge perspective. Can we send out messages which can be imbibed, but these messages are vetted? These messages are culturally and contextually appropriate. They're simple enough. I mean, think of it like designing a consent form, right? What is it that you're asked by your ethics committee when you take your consent form? Is this simple enough? Is this something someone would understand in the community, right? So are we keeping our messages simple? Are we making them interesting? And are we communicating it in the right way? And what can we use from a technology perspective for that, right? So if we use the same platforms through which misinformation spreads, then we can, of course, use them also for information purposes. Now, technology, you talked about tools like AI, ML, ChatGPT, etc., are also being used for precision medicine. So in science, what can we use these tools for to try to figure out, again, quicker, so that a clinician, when he or she is treating a patient, is able to figure out what medication I should be using quicker. You don't need to wait for a culture report to come through. You don't start with a broad spectrum just because you don't know what pathogen you're dealing with, right? Is there something which technology can help for that purpose? And we're doing that in cancer care. Some of us are working in mental health with precision medicine using many of these tools. So certainly in the field of infectious diseases as well, there is a lot of role which technology can play in terms of making it more likely that we are able to take clinical decisions faster and using the more appropriate medication rather than medication which might not work, might also go in for resistance. And the third part being, I think, how do we prevent the misuse of technology, right? Where technology is also used then for spreading misinformation, where people get access to information saying if you have X number of symptoms, then go ahead and take an antibiotic and you'll be fine in 3 days, or that it's not important to finish your course of antibiotics if you've been prescribed an antibiotic, like that. So I think that's where we need to leverage technology for good, but also understand what the downsides are and try to address those.
Thank you, Anand. Dr. Rama Chaudhary, what's your take on the technology in our efforts to tackle AMR, especially involving students, medical students and other students?
Thank you for your question again. I think we can start with very simple technologies. It may not be very high-end technology. Like people, whenever medical students are there in casualty, and we do have point of care test available. And that is a simple decision you need to take, whether it is this febrile illness is bacterial or viral, or whether it is malaria. Using a simple dipstick test, or what you call it, immunochromatography, you can find out the right diagnosis. We have been doing even in COVID. I mean, that point of care test is being used. And getting the right diagnosis, which Dr. Katoch emphasized so much, is so important right at the casualty level. We should not, wait that like only when the confirmation comes from the microbiology lab, then only we have to go for decision. And that is where you will stop using inappropriate antibiotic, or may not be required any antibiotic, or maybe, you really know how to go about in this particular infection. So I think the point of care test is a very simple test. Most of the tests are available. And if we can encourage more, made in India point of care tests, because they're very expensive when we're getting from abroad. And there are, unfortunately, in India, most of the PhD work or the work goes and remains in freezers. It does not see the bedside. There is still a lot of gap between developing a technology, doing the work, and then taking it to the industry for upscaling. I still feel there are a lot of hurdles which students or the PhD people have to really wait for that. But if we can hasten those technologies, that transfer of technology can be done, then there are many tests which are already available, but they have not been upscaled, or they have not been able to be used. That is first thing. Second, which I said in the previously also, developing AMR app. So our many students have already developed, especially on the smartphones, that and what Dr. Bhan just shared, that knowing that right antibiotic, the clinical syndrome, and this is the antibiotic of choice, you really don't have to wait. At least you start whichever information is available of our hospital. Again, it is not from other places or from foreign country. Our data supports, and that app is only for that particular hospital where they have pulled the data and then designed accordingly. Like third, I feel is technology is becoming, easily available to people now when they start collaborating. Because I don't have expertise of engineering or developing a platform or nanotechnology at times, or even where people are coming up with the media, like our younger generation is much more comfortable with the media. So these kinds of creating awareness, like the way we are holding this particular, webinar. So I think that kind of technology is also very, very important, where you can disseminate the information globally or at least nationally, and then make people aware, because no one has time to read through the books nowadays. Even if it is ebook, you will not be able to read it. You don't have time, but you will be happy to spend an hour listening to people and getting the, the right information or the filtered information, what is required. So I think technology is playing very important role. In Singapore, there are many universities which recently collaborated with AIMS, where they have, engineering institute and medical institute and many other institute in the one, in one university. And same is here, even where I'm working right now in Jaipur in NIMS University, there are many institutes in that same university. So that kind of collaboration is important. And a new field which is coming up, rather not so new, is artificial intelligence. So if we can use AI into this, I think it will really be very, very helpful. I mean, simple things like screening, which I shared in my last webinar also, screening X-rays and just, saving time on radiograph will help you to be able to diagnose a case of tuberculosis much earlier and treat the patient much earlier, or any other, pulmonary infection. So this technology is really coming up, but you have to use it very wisely. So that is what I feel technology plays very important role. And I personally feel we should not all start becoming technologists. We should, collaborate with the technologies, because that is not the time or the age now, or even for anyone. I think the collaboration part is very important. If we collaborate with the right people, So we should know the platforms which can help us to get the right person with which I need to collaborate. So that will help me to kind of use my medical expertise and the other person with their technology, and we can merge it and bring it to the, whether it is AMR or any other problem which we are trying to solve. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is Dangaji there? Dangaji?
Yeah. Namaskar.
Namaskar ji. Regarding
So,
technology,
yeah.
how can we utilize technology not only for medical students, for management students, for engineering students, and how can the management institutions help the medical schools and other branches of science to utilize technology in our efforts to tackle AMR?
Well, technology is, as a matter of fact, ubiquitous. And technology, the term technology applies to practically each and every sphere. It could be communications, it could be research, could be, education, or it could be product development. Everywhere these days, we are not talking about technology. Now, what it has done is to help us in possibly collaborating with each other, communicating to each other in real time or with a little bit of the passage of time, whatever is happening. Now, for example, today, I mean, using the technology platform of Zoom, maybe 20 of us or 10 or 12 of us are right now over here, and then thousands and thousands of people can log in and listen to what we are doing. So what we are achieving in these 2.5 hours was possibly impossible maybe 10 years back or 20 years back. So in the very same fashion, when you are looking at the use of technology for finding solutions, the moment we have an open mind and we have an open platform and we have got, say something which is transparent, which is rational. We are not talking here about, say merely sharing anecdotes. We are not talking about having a framework which is, say irrational. We are talking about something which is reasonable, which is rational, which is scientific, and which, say can be explained. The frameworks, say can be properly there, and then the management institutes that are there, if you're talking about, they can obviously help, medical colleges and others in a collaborative way. These days, we talk always about collaborations. We talk about PPP, we talk about, academy, industry, and obviously the government and the policy making people coming together. Now, when we are talking about AMR, I guess, say going forward, we can certainly invite the real policy makers. I mean, what I'm trying to say is the people who are in the various government policy making bodies to take the inputs, or if they are having a draft, that draft can be discussed across the table. We don't have to spend time. So this is what the management is all about. I mean, to be very frank with you, the term management, to my mind, is to look at various options to tackle a constraint or a problem, and then find out the optimal solution. I mean, management is always to confront a problem, to see how best can that be tackled. Okay, this is what the management schools, to teach everybody else. And that is what the management can do in respect of even AMR challenge or any other challenge. I mean, all the people who are there on the table have to be open-minded. I mean, I should, say, be willing to listen to what you are saying. You may be from a different, walk of life, or I should be able to, listen to what Dr. Katoch is saying, who is, sitting in a policy-making body, and we have discussion, we have debate on facts, figures, and if there is a need to change, then we change that. So management schools or management colleges, they certainly, can help. I can only give a simple, say, illustration of IIM Ahmedabad, which has got two, say schools. One is a public policy school, which has come up now. So if you're talking about, the public policy intervention, then that kind of a school can help us. Then they've got a center of excellence for health services, health administration. Now, those are the kind of people that can help. So we should bring all them together. It is very, very, essential that we use various technological platforms for communication, for exchange, for, say, research, innovation, funding, financing. So many things to be looked at, because we want to create obviously viable solutions. We need to validate those solutions, and thereafter we have to convert them into business, because every idea and every single concept eventually has to be converted into business. That business can be a social business, which is an ethical and win-win, maybe the situation wherein you are not looking at only profit maximization. You are looking for a profit, but that profit has to be a win-win profit. It has to be an ethical, it has to be an environmentally correct profit. Or we can say allow free pricing and go for a pure capitalistic model, which is being followed by many of the pharma companies. And there are some the companies which are probably going for a social business model. So with the management institutes, the management schools and management students can become a part and parcel of your drive, because eventually you want to solve the problem that the people are facing, or the country is facing, or the globe is facing. And within that, we build suitable incentivized business models that will make our whole effort more meaningful and creative and constructive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dangaji, for mentioning about the business models of AMR. A very interesting concept. Amita ji, Dr. Amita?
Yes, I'm here.
We are discussing about the technology, the business models of AMR, the modules of AMR. So there's a broad, we are discussing about a broader spectrum of AMR here. What's your take on the business models and the technology of AMR?
Regarding the same, I will give the example of my own institute where we are doing, and my own department, in fact, microbiology, where I'm heading the department also. 6 years back, we had young startups which were from IITians. They just wanted samples and how they came and how and both of us sat down, and then AMR is one of the projects that we're doing with them. And they have come up with a nanopore, basically. And we are doing now how we can do diagnostic stewardship with them so that I can do faster. Like I said, I come from a government institute. For me to get whether a POC or a diagnostic, which is very expensive. So I try to see where I can take Indian startups and help them there. And it looks very exciting to us because they come up with a nanopore, how they are doing vis-a-vis culture, Vitex and all that, and helping. So even if I can do 1% contribution towards that and bring down the cost and make it available to public laboratories to solve waste as an NOC, that is what I mean as a point of care, as a point of care that we are doing. I think we will achieve a lot where India is concerned, where AMR is concerned. Another thing what I felt, which I, as an administrator now, because being as a vice dean, one thing good during this COVID, I mean, there are some many good points also which came with COVID, and one is this e-platform which came for teaching. We made it compulsory for the students, especially the postgraduate, that before they go for the MD or the MS, they have to do the basic course on biomedical research. Okay, it became a compulsion. That means they cannot put in their exam application for their MD seats till they have passed out this. And I feel we are in a position now that we must make even this AMR and AMS course compulsory because it's across the field. So something from up, if it comes, make it a compulsion. It becomes, so it is feasible. They don't have to go physically for any of this course, which is all done on the e-platform. But that certification is important, and I think we need to do that. So two things, not only AMR, AMS, but even infection control needs to be there as a compulsory subject for at least for my PGs. For my UGs and for the research component, what we talk, even over there, before they apply, not only the research, they have to do one publication, they have to do a paper presentation. So that itself is stimulating, and I think we must make compulsory at least 4 or 5, whether it is clinical, because the number of PGs also have increased, and the teachers are wondering now what thesis topic to give to these PGs for research. This component should be made compulsory in each and every subject. Something, whether I'm doing audit of the prescription or whatever, there are so many modalities I can use to achieve this goal of how I can strengthen my own hospital. Like we said, you need your own data. And we never get this data. We as microbiologists will give the complete antibiogram for the first line, for the second line. But when it comes to seeing what exactly is prescribed, Even if I sit with my pharmacy to see what drugs I've got, but actually what is prescribed is totally different many a time. It is not what I have got dispensed into my hospital setting, because we do not have many of the newer ones, and what actually my clinicians are prescribing. There's a big gap over there. So having audits of this treatment, which was also mentioned, I think it's very important. Each hospital compulsory, some thesis has to go in, which will give what is the picture over there. So once we do this as a system, no, it has to be put into the curriculum. It has to be made compulsory, because some things I feel has to be, and AMR, now we have reached a state, we cannot allow them to decide. We must make one topic compulsory. So I think we are in the place now to make it into that. We did it for research. I think we needed to do it for this also.
Thank you, Amitaji. And Dilip sir, your take on the technology, the ethics of technology in AMR and other areas.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just thinking, I was just listening to all my colleagues talking. I'm just looking at medical education technology to improve AMR and prescription habits of graduates, postgraduates, and practicing clinicians. Number one, education is always driven by assessment. So I start backwards. You start with knowledge retention questions. So when I said knowledge retention questions, you ask the questions like, what is the organism that you want to tackle? Sentinel organisms, sentinel bugs. Now, if it is MRSA, what is your sentinel organism drug? Whether you want to say vancomycin or clindamycin or daptomycin, whatever it is. Or you take the second two organisms or three organisms, like all in the hospital. Pseudomonas, Acinetobacter. Third one, probably I would take is Klebsiella. I'm not going to get into Clostridium difficile, or I'm not going to get into Enterococcus. I want these 5 organisms to be understood well, drug-bug combination. Now, how do I teach this to my medical students and to my postgraduates? Proper prescription. I think we should go in for gamification. In other words, you have to explain very clearly. It won't take more than 1 hour. I was just in a meeting for an SCRB meeting where we received 3 crores to talk about neuroanatomy. Now, to create a gamification or to make people understand on AMR, maybe the AMR Trust should apply for a grant to SCRB and develop a pan-nationwide kind of a, let's say, app for all the medical college students, pharmacy students, veterinary students to understand what is bacterial resistance, how the resistance gene can be carried by bacterial chromosomes in a game-like manner. What happens to efflux pumps? What happens to influx pump? Who gets affected? Now, it is a question of what is your go-to drug now, and when do you withdraw the antibiotics? What is the bacteria's task? It can be created, and then you ask the question, and once you create it, it should be an all or none pass. Now, when we do OSCEs, if you don't get your OSCE right in basic life support system, the intern doesn't get his certification, period. It should be like if you don't know it has to be 10 on 10. So I would go first for medical education technology, the way we teach, maybe by using gamification technology for them to understand better. That would be one. The second one is we have to bring in, of course, I'm not getting into clinical scenarios and other things right now. That will be tough for them. You could do that at a later date. But second one is, how do they use the diagnostics? And we need to understand put in technology on how these diagnostics can be used. Third one is, it's good if you can suggest some kind of a modeling and other things, whether you're right or wrong. But secondly, more important is the use of diagnostics. The third one will be, what are the topics that have to be incorporated into this AMS? That is a tough thing. you have interdisciplinary collaboration among students. What is the topic relevant for the veterinarians, topic relevant for the pharmacology students? All of these would have to be put in. And I would just stop with these three in terms of bringing in medical education technologies. Maybe it won't take more than one day if they have finished all of their basic understanding and reading. Maybe in 2 hours' time they can get through. They should be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip Saab. JPS Gill, the technology AMR in the veterinary world.
In our veterinary sciences, the PG students are working on these topics. Postgraduate students in their such problem. One of our students has developed an app that is the Understanding Antimicrobial Resistance. The app is available on Google or the phone. So all the details, the work, how it is resistance comes, it is a bilingual for the farmers. Also, the apps are developed. They are working on the digitalization of all the data of 20 years of the hospital data. And in Punjab, they are collecting it and they are working on it to develop an app so that wherever any veterinarian go for the antibiotic testing, testing, they can put the results on that app. So, for one organism, what's the pattern in one area, they can emerge out, and the veterinarians can get the clue of the use of the antibiotics. These type of the apps are working. We are also working on the artificial intelligence and developing the pen side kits, because the infrastructure in the animal husbandry practices is very, very minimal in the field, in the villages. So we are developing a kits, very cheap and dipstick type kits, so that they can use it in the field, and the data can come on the mobile and they can be collected on. So these type of the technology we are working on in the veterinary side. But there is a lot of work to be done in this type, the use of technology in the veterinary, because there is a lot of difference between in the medical and the veterinary professions.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. Now, one important part, we discussed about the theory of AMR, the ideology of AMR. Personally, until few years ago, I was completely against involving industry into the discussions of AMR. I believe industry is for profit and AMR is an ideological thing that we should deal in an ideological way. And then when we started discussing about solutions of AMR, antibiotics are developed by industry, diagnostics are developed by industry, technology is developed by industry, and we are forced to include and forced to collaborate closely with the industry. And that comes to the ethical question: how to collaborate with the industry in an ethical way to tackle AMR. And Anand, you are an ethics expert. How can we have this collaboration with industry in the field of AMR in an ethical way?
Sure, thanks, Abdul. So it's an important question to ask, but it's also key, as you already laid out, that we have to recognize that industry is a key stakeholder, right? It's industry, whether that be owned by the public sector or the private sector. In India, it's largely owned by the private sector, has an important role to play. They are the ones who are producing the medications. They're the ones producing the antibiotics. And for that, of course, we need to engage with them. But that engagement needs to be done in a way that there is clarity. There is transparency. We know what is it that we are engaging with them on. And there are no conflicts of interest, or you manage the conflicts of interest in a way that they do not influence our activism, our advocacy, and our larger vision, right? But if we were to say that we will start with the premise that we don't want to work with industry entirely, then it is not going to work as well, right? Because if we don't get them on board in our response, then we are losing an important key stakeholder. But that having been said, of course, they have interests here, right, which are commercial in nature, and that needs to be recognized. And hence working with them means also telling them at times that some of their own practices around how they might be promoting medication, how they might be selling the medication, how they might be marketing the medication might have flaws, or there might be issues, and getting them on board in trying to also address this. But ultimately, this is going to be a market issue for them as well. Even if they take a purely business approach to it, if their medication stop working because AMR becomes a further acute issue, then it's going to impact their bottom line as a profit-making entity as well. So I think it's important to engage, and it can be done ethically, but it requires us one to know very clearly as to what is it that we expect from them. How are we going to ensure that this is done in a transparent manner? Because ultimately, where concerns lie is there something which is a conflict of interest which is not clearly visible, where there is something happening behind the scenes and the rest of the ecosystem or set of stakeholders are not having access to that information. Transparency hence would be extremely important, and ensuring that is clear right from the beginning, that what is the role of pharma in this, how are we getting them on the table, and also ensuring that they are not influencing decisions in a way which might be seen as benefiting them. So that I think we need to take a lot of lessons from other areas where private interests have been engaged, but they've also been kept at some distance, so that they do not end up taking precedence in decision making. They do not end up dominating the decision making. They are one of the key stakeholders, but we recognize the constraints of working with them as well. Thank you.
Dr. Ashwini, you are an infectious disease physician and one of the trustees. Would you please make your comments on the issues we discussed?
Okay, so this was really a wonderful and interesting discussion, because we have got input from so many of our esteemed panelists. And I believe, like the app which is being used in veterinary college, or Dr. Mathai said, so all these things we can definitely implement in our way forward. So that will help us in building this AMR program. The base should be very strong, and I guess all these inputs will definitely help us in contributing towards AMR.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwini. We had a wonderful discussion, very detailed, more than 2-hour discussion on various aspects of AMR. Is there anything else the esteemed panelists would like to discuss? Any specific points on AMR?
Yeah.
Any aspects?
So I saw in one of your, the questions you have sent, the role of NGO. I don't know whether we have discussed that because I joined a little late. So I just wanted to bring out that as far as the fight for AMR is concerned, or whether it is for sustainable development goals, some of the NGOs are really working towards that. I just wanted to mention one or two which I'm associated with. One is called SEEDS. And this NGO is by Dr. Manu Gupta. And the SEEDS word stand for Sustainable Environment and Ecological Development Society. They have done wonderful work during disasters management to prevent infections, to help the children so that they don't they can be given rightly and timely health and other facilities can be provided. And recently, United Nations has given them for their efforts in this management. It is called Sasakawa Award by United Nations in 2022. So that is one organization which has been really working at ground level to prevent infections when disasters occur. In that way, they are helping because they are preventing infection, and in indirect way they are helping to contain AMR. Second organization, which I think Dr. Kutoj may be familiar with, is Bharat Soka Gakkai. That is another value creating educational society, which is also developing and making a lot of efforts toward creating awareness in a very large scale level, and how we can really, by small actions, we can help towards preventing spread of infections, or improving the climate, saving the energy, and a lot of things which can help finally to give a kind of One Health and Sustainable Development Goals. And as I said, that AMR is impacting all the development goals, it is going to help. So these are some of the organizations I know, and they have created a kind of exhibitions of Seeds of Hope, which is giving direction that how one person can make the difference. So they have given the stories where people have tried cleaning, like making the drive, one person making the drive of cleaning the sea of all the garbage, or no plastics, or kind of creating an environment which is safe for the people. So these small actions may look that they may not be relevant to AMR, but I can say that everything is really linked. If you see, we cannot be in isolation. So whatever we are doing is actually impacting the globally everything. So I think these kind of NGOs may play a very important role when it comes to creating awareness and when it comes to expanding, kind of making the general public, public who is not even students or just, everyone can be part of it. So that is where they play important role, and they have already contributed. Many NGOs have already contributed to great extent in various fields. So I think that way, if we involve them, because I saw that point which was perhaps missed in
Yes.
our discussion. I thought we must bring those NGOs as part of fight against AMR and get their inputs. They are able to create awareness in schools or in the fields or in general public, which we are not otherwise able to do at times because of our busy schedule. So I think there maybe Dr. Katoj can throw some light on that, but that's what I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Katoj, sir?
Well, I think what Professor Rama Chaudhary has pointed out, their NGOs involvement is very vital actually. There were two examples she gave. I knew both of them, but I think you have to rope in everybody. That's when you are really looking at, but then give a targeted role so that they have an identity what they are doing in a particular area actually. So that they need recognition, they need a support from the community. And one more point which Professor Rama Chaudhary said down the line, that I think we again didn't get much discussion after that. And when you talked of hygiene, see the movements like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So when our post-independence India, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has been one of the most successful examples actually when a totally behavioral change communication can work actually. Okay, because the Prime Minister was following it every fourth Friday of the month actually, that would made a difference. But more after that, it is sustained actually. The Prime Minister got busy with other things, still, movement is sustained. Now, how many diarrheal outbreaks, everything prevented? We are not doing any studies on that. They were done by ISRO actually. A number of institutions. How many lives saved? That means if there are so many diarrheal outbreaks are prevented, not only directly lives are saved, their antibiotics are not given. And the same thing will apply to the other infections you're getting from the environment actually. So going beyond the Swachh Bharat, which was now expanded Swachh Bharat, but they should be much more expanded to airborne pathogens also, which I think whether this Prime Minister takes over or he takes up in the next term or somebody next his successor takes, that I'm not saying that, but we should not wait for that. Like our trust, keeping when the tentacles open, when Dr. Rama Chaudhary's presentation today was very different from one perspective because she told so many things are interlinked. And all of us knew that, but we are thinking of one thing which is interesting me actually at that time. So I think when we look at the other sides where the need for the antibiotics will be reduced, whether it is a proven that is a homeopathy working in the small viral infections, so you don't need an antibiotic. Same type of vaccine-like solutions working where you don't need an antibiotic. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, you don't need an antibiotic. But then who carries the message beyond us actually? I think that the best part is the NGO sector. Actually, I think so we have to nurture small NGOs who will play a part for us, who will speak for us. And I'm telling you, they are very motivated, most of them. They are large number, they are very motivated. I think that's a great point which she brought out today. Yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dangaji?
Yes, Dr. Ghafoor, I have a small point to make that we are not going to be confronted and we are going to be saddled with the problems. And as patients or as consumers or customers, we want solutions. So if they are not going to come through antibiotics, what can be the solutions through some other scientific knowledges? Now, this is where we need to keep our minds open and transparent. As Katoji has correctly said, homeopathy has been following its traditional science, and they've been evolving nosodes. These nosodes are again made from biomaterials. They may be made from the same organisms, which could be dead or live, and then potentized in the manner that was prescribed by Samuel Hahnemann over 200 years ago. Now we have got a lot more science and a lot of more knowledge. We can look at attenuation or dilution of a biological material and then try it out. And if it gives us an efficacy and if it gives us effectiveness, then have at least a kind of a limited use, which can be the base for a bigger use. So I think the time is ripe now for all of us to have an open mind. We need to find solutions to the bacteriological or the viral problems and see from where can we get the solutions. For example, in Spanish flu, homeopathy had done reasonably well. Well, that example was there, and in the current, the COVID situation, when we did not have any solution, for the virus other than the vaccines, again, the results, have been there. These can be documented, these can be collected. Very same thing can be done for Ayurveda, and then see what can be the new hypothesis which can be, probably used. So the point is that the pharmaceutical industry, one way or the other, will always try to see that whatever work that they have done, I'm talking about individual companies, any company for that matter, it will try to maximize the profits. I guess, the regulatory framework and our approval framework should be such that it allows a free flow of knowledge, free flow of, the trials, free flow of, information, and it should have a consumer in mind. If, solution is not available through one, the particular branch, I'm sure it couldn't be, given kind of, an opportunity to the others, evaluated and then taken forward. So we have got a very bright future. The debate that you have opened is something, which can open up many solutions, and those solutions can come from within biomedical, or they can come from without. They can come from some, maybe present sciences, or they can come from some, other sciences, like we are learning, the biome replacement. We are looking at, some of the nanosciences. We are looking at, some other, maybe knowledge systems. So I guess we have got to, to be optimistic, and we have got to be fair and transparent.
Agree. AMR is such a complex challenge. We need to keep our eyes open and look for all evidence-based solutions. Rightly said. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have one comment. Sorry, Gil sir, go ahead, Gil sir.
I just want to add one success story that we work with the rural school children's. We visited their schools, classes. We give 1 or 2 lectures. We give them games on the antibiotic resistance, quizzes, and then get the feedback after few months, a month or 2 months. The success story is that they start following the vaccination in their animals. They guide their parents to get their animal vaccination, tell the quacks not to give the antibiotics, on the hygiene for the milking, and all these things. They get it practiced from their farmers, fathers or mothers or the workers who are illiterate. So if we tap the young children's in a very simple ways, that can be very beneficial in the education section. That's my point.
Yeah, thank you, Dilip sir.
Yeah, I have only one comment and a supplement complaint. We have to get the citizens of tomorrow, in other words, the voice of the future, like children, high school, college students, caregivers, society, and educate them, because it is the future. And what is it that I want them to be educated upon is, daddy, mummy, please don't take me to this hospital simply because it has got a high antibiotic consumption, or their resistance rates are very high. Mummy, please don't take me to this hospital for immunization. It has to be a people's movement. I would strongly urge that we go in for that and make them better informed citizens because of the collateral damage that it produces upon the future of my children. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip sir. Any other comments? We had 2.5 hours of comprehensive discussion, from theory, AMR modules, the business of AMR, the technology in AMR. Thank you all the esteemed panelists. We will be conducting many more such discussions. We will need you back. And we are grateful to the doctors who gave small donation to the trust so we can conduct our activities without any registration fee. And a few companies have given us unrestricted educational grant, which are small grants by Sanofi, Galangen, Pfizer, Converge Biotech, Alniche, Viatris. And these are small unrestricted educational grants for the webinar so that we can conduct the webinar without any registration fee. Thank you very much. Thank you all the esteemed panelists. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Katoch. Thank you, sir. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.